The silent prodigy, the fluorescent lights of the Anchorage Care Center buzzed overhead as Nurse Patricia Valdez made her evening rounds. In room 314, 13-year-old Marcus Delacroix sat hunched over his sketchpad, his frail fingers gripping a charcoal pencil with surprising precision. Muscular dystrophy had claimed much of his physical strength, but his mind remained razor-sharp, processing patterns and connections that others couldn't see. Patricia paused at his doorway, watching him draw the same intricate circular designs he'd been sketching for months. Concentric rings filled with geometric symbols, spiraling outward in mathematical precision. The other staff dismissed them as the idle doodles of a lonely child. But Patricia saw something different: purpose, intelligence, meaning hidden in every curve and line. "Another mandala, Marcus?" she asked softly, not expecting a response. He rarely spoke, his autism creating barriers that most couldn't cross. But tonight was different. Marcus looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. "Not mandala," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Map." Patricia's heart skipped. In 2 years of caring for him, she'd heard him speak perhaps a dozen words total. She approached slowly, studying his latest creation. The design was more complex than usual, featuring symbols that seemed almost familiar. Her breath caught. Last week, she'd seen a documentary about the Zeroth Ark discovery. The massive alien vessel buried beneath Antarctic ice had captivated the world. But what struck her now were the markings shown in the footage. The same angular symbols, the same spiral patterns, identical to what Marcus had been drawing for months. "Where did you see these symbols, honey?" she asked, kneeling beside his wheelchair. Marcus pointed to his temple, then back to the drawing. "Always there, waiting." Patricia's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone, comparing Marcus's sketch to screenshots from the documentary. The match was undeniable. Every symbol, every curve, every intricate detail, perfectly replicated by a boy who'd never left Alaska, never seen the archaeological broadcasts, never had access to the classified imagery. She thought of the news reports, the endless stream of experts who'd failed to activate the alien ship. Linguists, archaeologists, computer scientists, military codebreakers, all stumped by the dormant vessel. Yet here sat a disabled child, casually reproducing its most complex markings from memory. "Marcus," she said carefully, "how long have you been seeing these patterns?" He tilted his head, considering. "Since the dream started, since it called." Patricia's blood ran cold. The Zeroth Ark had been discovered 14 months ago, but excavation began 24 months ago. Marcus had been drawing these symbols for 26 months. He'd been connected to the ship before humanity even knew it existed. With shaking fingers, she dialed the emergency contact number from the documentary Dr. James Morton at the International Xenorchaeology Institute. As the phone rang, she watched Marcus return to his drawing, adding new layers of detail with the confidence of someone following a blueprint only he could see. The world's greatest minds had failed to unlock the Ark's secrets. Perhaps they'd been asking the wrong person. The gathering storm DR. James Morton stared at the photographs on his satellite phone screen, his coffee growing cold in the Antarctic wind. Behind him, the Zeroth Ark's exposed hull gleamed like black glass, its surface covered in the same symbols that a disabled boy in Alaska had been drawing for over 2 years. "This is impossible," muttered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the expedition's lead xenobiologist, peering over Morton's shoulder. "How could a child with no access to our research replicate these markings exactly?" "General." Rebecca Stone, the military liaison overseeing the dig, crossed her arms against the bitter cold. "Could be a hoax. Maybe someone leaked classified images." Morton shook his head. "I've checked. These drawings predate our discovery." Some of them match symbols we found just last week in sealed chambers. He looked up at the massive ship. It's angular architecture defying human understanding. This boy, Marcus ... he might be our key? Inside the expedition's command center, Professor Viktor Petrov analyzed the latest scans of the Ark's interior. 20 months of excavation had revealed a vessel nearly 2 kilometers long, its corridors filled with dormant technology that responded to no human interface. Every attempt to activate its systems had failed spectacularly. The quantum resonance patterns are unlike anything in our databases, Petrov explained to the assembled team. The ship's neural networks, if we can call them that, operate on principles we don't understand. But these drawings, he gestured to Marcus's sketches, now displayed on multiple screens. They suggest a form of psychic interface, a connection that transcends traditional communication methods. Stone frowned. You're talking about bringing a severely disabled child to the most dangerous archaeological site on Earth, based on some drawings? Those drawings are the first genuine breakthrough we've had, Morton replied firmly. Every major government has sent their best minds here. We've had Nobel laureates, quantum physicists, artificial intelligence experts, all failures. This boy sees something we don't. Dr. Nora Fitzgerald, the expedition's child psychologist, studied Marcus's medical files. Muscular dystrophy, autism, spectrum disorder, but his cognitive assessments show extraordinary pattern recognition abilities. His brain processes visual information in ways we're only beginning to understand. The debate continued for hours, but the decision was inevitable. The Zeroth Ark had cost 17 lives during excavation cave-ins, equipment failures, unexplained energy discharges. World leaders were growing impatient, threatening to abandon the project or resort to more destructive methods of entry. As Morton placed the call to Anchorage, requesting Marcus's transport to Antarctica, none of them noticed the subtle change in the Ark's surface. Deep within its hull, lights that had remained dormant for millennia began to pulse with a soft, rhythmic glow. The ship was listening. It had been listening for 26 months, ever since a young boy's dreams first touched its consciousness across thousands of miles of ice and stone. Now, as arrangements were made to bring him closer, the Ark's sleeping system stirred with anticipation. In Alaska, Marcus set down his pencil and smiled, the first smile Patricia had ever seen from him. On his sketchpad, a new drawing began to take shape, a massive chamber filled with crystalline structures, and at its center, a small figure in a wheelchair, surrounded by light. Almost time, he whispered to no one in particular. The Zeroth Ark pulsed once more, sending electromagnetic waves rippling through the ice. Around the world, sensitive equipment registered the anomaly, but only one person understood its meaning: Marcus. Dalacroix closed his eyes and began to dream of home. First contact, the helicopter's rotors churned through the Antarctic air as Marcus pressed his face against the small window, watching the excavation site grow larger below. The massive black hull of the Zeroth Ark jutted from the ice like the spine of a sleeping giant, surrounded by a maze of research stations, drilling equipment, and security barricades. Patricia squeezed his shoulder gently. "You okay, honey?" Marcus nodded, his eyes never leaving the alien vessel. "It's singing," he said simply. Dr. Morton, seated across from them, leaned forward. "Singing? What do you mean?" "Happy song. Lonely for so long. Now ... lonely." Marcus turned to meet Morton's gaze, his expression more focused than Patricia had ever seen. "It missed us." The helicopter touched down on the landing pad, and within minutes, Marcus was surrounded by a crowd of scientists, military personnel, and reporters. Camera flashes popped as he was transferred to a specialized cold-weather wheelchair, his thin frame bundled in Arctic gear. General Stone approached with her characteristic directness. Son, we need you to understand this ship is dangerous. We've lost good people trying to get inside. If you feel scared or uncomfortable at any point, you tell us immediately. Marcus studied her with those penetrating dark eyes. You're afraid of it, but it's not angry, just confused. It doesn't understand why you can't hear it. Professor Petrov exchanged glances with Dr. Tanaka. Hear it? Marcus, the ship hasn't made any sounds. Our instruments detect no audio emissions. Not that kind of hearing, Marcus replied, allowing himself to be wheeled toward the excavation site. The other kind, in your mind place. As they approached the ark's exposed surface, something extraordinary happened. The symbols etched into the hull began to glow with soft, pulsing light, the same pattern Marcus had been drawing for months. The assembled crowd gasped, stepping back instinctively, but Marcus leaned forward eagerly. Hello, he whispered. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every electronic device within a 100-meter radius flickered and sparked. Emergency alarms blared as power systems fluctuated wildly. But through the chaos, one sound cut clear, a harmonic vibration that seemed to emanate from the ship itself, rising and falling like a melodic phrase. My God, breathed Dr. Fitzgerald. It's actually singing. Morton shouted orders over the alarm sounds. All non-essential personnel, evacuate to minimum safe distance. Core team only. But Marcus was already in motion, guiding his wheelchair closer to the ship's interface panel, a complex arrangement of crystalline nodes that had remained dark for 20 months. As he approached, each crystal began to illuminate in sequence, creating a cascade of light that flowed across the ark's entire visible surface. Marcus, stop. Stone commanded, but the boy was beyond hearing human voices now. He reached out with one trembling hand and pressed his palm against the central crystal. The effect was instantaneous and terrifying. The ground shook as massive systems deep within. The ship roared to life. Ice cracked and shifted around the hull as the ark began to free itself from its frozen prison. But it wasn't the physical awakening that terrified the observers. It was the mental one. Every person within 50 meters suddenly felt it, a vast alien consciousness touching their minds with gentle curiosity. Ancient beyond measure, yet somehow childlike in its wonder at finally making contact. Through the psychic connection, images flooded their awareness. Star systems they'd never seen, civilizations that had risen and fallen while Earth was still. Cooling and most shocking of all other human children, scattered across the globe, all drawing the same symbols, all connected to the same impossible network. Marcus smiled as information poured through him. 20,000 years of accumulated knowledge and patience. The Ark hadn't been waiting for humanity to evolve. Technologically, it had been waiting for them to evolve consciously. And the children were just the beginning. The network awakens across the globe. The awakening began simultaneously. In a hospital. In Mumbai, 8-year-old Priya Sharma suddenly sat up in her bed, her eyes wide with wonder as symbols blazed in her mind. In São Paulo, 12-year-old Diego Santos dropped his game controller and began frantically sketching patterns that matched Marcus's drawings exactly. In a refugee camp outside Damascus, 10-year-old Amara Hassan stopped mid-sentence and stared into the distance, her consciousness touching something vast and ancient. At the Antarctic site, chaos reigned. The Zereth Ark had fully extracted itself from the ice, hovering 3 meters above the ground on invisible forces. Its hull pulsed with a rhythmic light as systems that had slumbered for millennia roared back to life. Emergency vehicles raced across the frozen landscape as personnel evacuated to safe distances. But Marcus remained calm at the ship's interface, his small hand still pressed against the central crystal. Through him, the Ark was speaking to every connected child on Earth, sharing its purpose with minds young enough to accept impossible truths got Dr. Morton, crouched beside Marcus's wheelchair, his voice urgent. "Son, you need to tell us what's happening. The ship's energy readings are off the charts. Are we in danger?" Marcus's eyes remained closed, but he smiled. Not danger. Graduation day. General Stone's radio crackled with reports from around the world. "Sir, we're getting calls from every major city. Children with neurological differences, autism, cerebral palsy, various conditions, they're all exhibiting the same behaviors. Drawing symbols, speaking about the ship, some kind of mass psychic event." Through the network, Marcus experienced what the other children were seeing. Memories of the Ark's journey across the galaxy, seeking worlds where consciousness was evolving beyond mere survival instincts. The ship was ancient beyond human comprehension, but its mission was elegantly simple to find species, ready to transcend their physical limitations and join a greater community of minds. "It's not from another planet," Marcus said suddenly, his voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. "It's from another time, the future, our future." Professor Petrov's instruments registered impossible readings. The quantum signature is shifting. The ship's molecular structure is becoming increasingly unstable, but not in a destructive way. It's translating itself into a different state of matter. Dr. Tanaka monitored the biometric sensors attached to Marcus. "His brain activity is unlike anything I've ever recorded. Multiple regions firing simultaneously in perfect synchronization. He's accessing cognitive capabilities that shouldn't be humanly possible." Through the psychic link, the Ark shared its history. Humanity's descendants, millions of years in the future, had transcended physical existence, becoming beings of pure consciousness. But they remembered their origins, remembered the struggles of their primitive ancestors. The Ark was their gift, a bridge between what humanity was and what it could become. The children, with their neurological differences, weren't disabled. They were evolved. Their brains processed reality in ways that allowed them to interface with technologies beyond current human understanding. They were the first of a new kind of human, one that thought in patterns rather than words, intuition rather than logic. Marcus opened his eyes and looked directly at Morton. "It's offering us a choice. Stay as we are or become something more. But only those who are ready. Only those who can hear the singing." The Ark's hull began to shift and flow like liquid metal, revealing chambers filled with crystalline structures that hummed with potential energy. Each crystal could house a human consciousness, preserving and enhancing it beyond the limitations of biological existence. But it wasn't mandatory. The ship would wait as long as necessary for humanity to decide its own fate. Some would choose transcendence. Others would remain bound to Earth. Both paths were equally valid. As understanding dawned on the assembled scientists, Marcus made his own choice. His consciousness expanded, touching every connected child across the globe, forming a network of young minds that would bridge the gap between humanity's present and its infinite future. The quiet boy in the wheelchair had become something magnificent, not despite his disabilities, but because of them. The Zereth Ark sang its harmonious song, and for the first time in 20 millennia, it was no longer alone. The choice of transcendence. 6 months after first contact, the world had irrevocably changed. The Zereth Ark now hovered permanently above the Antarctic Research Station, its hull shifting between solid matter and pure energy as it maintained its vigil over humanity's evolution. The global network of connected children had grown to over 3,000 individuals, their consciousness linked across continents in ways that traditional science couldn't explain. Marcus remained at the Antarctic facility, though his physical form was becoming increasingly translucent. His consciousness now existed partially within the Ark's quantum matrix, serving as humanity's primary ambassador to the vast galactic community that awaited their species. Gradation. Dr. Morton watched through the observation dome as Marcus floated within one of the Ark's crystalline chambers, his wheelchair long since abandoned. The boy's body glowed with soft internal light as he communicated with civilizations scattered across the galaxy. The latest reports show integration proceeding smoothly, Morton said to General Stone, who had remained to oversee the transition. 17 nations have established children's consciousness centers. The kids who choose to join the network maintain their individual personalities while gaining access to collective knowledge and capabilities. Stone nodded grimly. And the resistance movements? Growing, but manageable. Many people see the children's evolution as a threat to traditional humanity. Fear of the unknown, I suppose. Through the chamber's transparent walls, Marcus turned his luminous gaze toward them. His voice resonated directly in their minds, warm and reassuring despite its otherworldly quality. Fear is natural, he communicated. Change always frightens those who aren't ready. But the Ark doesn't force evolution. It only offers opportunity. Dr. Fitzgerald approached, reviewing data from the Global Monitoring Network. The children who've joined the collective show remarkable abilities: telepathic, communication, precognitive awareness, the ability to process information at superhuman speeds. But they're still fundamentally human. They laugh, cry, form friendships, dream about the future. More human than before, Marcus corrected gently. We've simply removed the barriers that prevented us from reaching our full potential. Outside? New arrival touched down on the landing pad. Professor Elena Vasquez, the world's leading expert in consciousness studies, had come to witness the phenomenon firsthand. Her daughter, Maria, was one of the connected children, a 12-year-old with Down syndrome whose cognitive abilities had expanded exponentially after joining the network. As Vasquez entered the facility, she carried with her the hopes and fears of billions. The United Nations had tasked her with determining whether the Ark's influence represented humanity's salvation or its doom. Marcus sensed her arrival and emerged from his chamber, his feet barely touching the ground as he moved. Despite his transformation, his smile remained utterly, recognizably human. "Professor Vasquez," he said aloud, his voice carrying both the warmth of a child and the wisdom of ages. "Maria sends her love. She's helping establish the new center." In Mexico City, Vasquez studied him carefully. "Are you still Marcus Delacroix, the boy who drew pictures in a care facility?" "I'm more Marcus than I ever was before," he replied simply. "And I'm also more than Marcus. The network doesn't erase who we are. It amplifies who we can become." Over the following days, Vasquez documented the extraordinary developments. The connected children had begun solving problems that had plagued humanity for generations: climate change, disease, interstellar communication. Their enhanced cognitive abilities, combined with their maintained emotional intelligence, created solutions that pure logic alone could never achieve. But perhaps most importantly, they remained voluntary. No child was forced to join the network, and those who chose traditional human development were treated with equal respect and protection. As her visit concluded, Vasquez faced the same choice that confronted every human: evolution or preservation, transcendence or tradition. Both paths led to valid futures, but only one led to the stars. The Zeroth Ark continued its patient song, a beacon of possibility hanging in the polar sky. Humanity stood at the threshold of its greatest adventure, guided by children who had transformed disability into capability, limitation into liberation. Marcus watched from his crystalline chamber as more families arrived each day, drawn by hope rather than fear. The quiet boy in the wheelchair had done more than unlock an alien ship. He had unlocked humanity's infinite potential. The awakening had only just begun.